afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? We're just going to make a start, and I just want to welcome everybody here to the launch of our Longford Maps Integrated Action Plan, and also a discussion on urban regeneration and the Camlin Quarter. And just to open it up, I'd just like to invite Cathaoirleach Louis McIntyre to say a few words.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And you're all particularly welcome here for the launch of our urban regeneration plan. In particular, I want to welcome the members of the general public who have come in here today, and also my fellow councillors. A majority of the councillors are here. In particular, our Cathaoirleach of the municipal district, Councillor Seamus Butler, our Director of Services, John McKeown, and all the council staff that are here today. And a particular welcome to our Minister, Damien English, who has graced us with his presence today to launch this regeneration. This is Damien's third visit, I think, to Longford, and you're always welcome. Very pleasant minister. I know him personally. He's candid and everything, not for me, but for my daughter, every time I meet him. Anyway, the launch of our integrated action plan. I would like to welcome you all here to Orison Conde and to the Camlin Quarter, which is the historic core of Longford Town. This is a very important day for us here in Longford, with the launch of our integrated action plan and the initiation of the Camlin Quarter project. We are also launching a tourism walking trail of the town, which will be important in encouraging visitors to come and spend time in our town. We are here to launch the Longford Maps Integrated Action Plan, which was developed under the URBAC programme. Connolly Barracks was the focus of the project, but it gave us the opportunity to bring a focus on the area of this part of the town and to begin the conversation around the potential of this area. Urban regeneration has got a renewed focus since the launch of the National Planning Framework and the National Development Plan earlier on this year. And this discussion on regeneration of the Camlin Quarter is timely considering the launch last Tuesday of the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund, which is seen as a catalyst for regeneration and rejuvenation of our urban areas. This plan was very much developed with the community through the input of our local group, and I would like to thank them for their enthusiastic engagement in the process. Their continued input into the redevelopment of the Camlin Quarter is vital to ensure the success of the overall project. I would also like to thank again the executive of Longford County Council and the planning and regeneration team for their hard work in developing and bringing together this plan, and their continuing work to make Longford a better place to live in the future. Again, I am delighted that Minister Damien English is here today to launch this plan for us, and we thank him for that, especially considering his role within the department on the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund. I hope you all enjoy the discussions over the next couple of hours, and it generates further conversation on the Camlin Quarter and the potential of this area.
For those that don't know me, my name is Lorraine O'Connor, and I'm the Regeneration Officer here in Longford County Council. And I'm just going to give a brief outline of what we have here this afternoon and the reason for organising this event and asking you all to come and join us here today before I pass on to our other speakers. And I'm absolutely delighted to have the calibre of speakers that are here today to begin the conversation on the Camlin Quarter. So, first of all, I'm delighted to see so many of the local community here. in particular the local residents and the local business people, because at the end of the day the Camlin Quarter is your part of town, it's where you live and you work, and it's you that is going to be affected by the end result of this project. So it's very important to us that you were involved in the development of the project from the outset, so it's really heartening to see you here today. Before I do go any further, I have been warned I have a bit of housekeeping to do. In terms of fire escapes, there was one just behind me out the curtains, and there's one out the door you came in. We don't expect any issues today, but just if there is, please follow the direction of Sonia, who's our fire warden, to direct you to the nearest assembly point out in the car park to your right. Just to briefly look at the agenda for this afternoon, and just to thank all the speakers who are here to be part of the event and to give us their experience in urban regeneration. And some of you may know them, some may not, but Simon Wall and Moira Henry from Westport and from Waterford respectively have been heavily involved in regeneration projects in their area, and we're hoping that from listening to them and from where they started and where they've come to today, that we may be able to get some inspiration on what we can do here in the Camlin Quarter in Longford. And also Niall Cousins for his input in terms of the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund and where we might be able to target funding for this development. Also, I would like to thank particularly Minister English for taking time out of his busy schedule to be here today, and hopefully maybe give us some insight into the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund, which was launched this morning, and that we hope may act as a catalyst for the regeneration of the Camlin Quarter. There are a number of reasons that led us to organise the event today, and just to give you a brief outline of what they are, and just before I do that, I want to thank the team here in the Planning and Regeneration Department for their help in organising the event, which, as you can imagine, it wasn't just a small work that I could do on my own. So particularly Sonia and Sheila, who did an awful lot of work in the organisation today. But firstly, we're here to launch the Longford Maps Integrated Action Plan, and this plan was developed as a result of our involvement in a European project under the URBACT programme, and that involved us working with 8 other European partners who had similar issues with unused and disused military sites within their towns and cities, and to look at potential options for the reuse of these former military sites and to bring them back into the active life of the town. And I know some people might say, well, Connolly Barracks is not open yet, and it's not, and we will acknowledge that, but it has been very important in terms of beginning the conversation around what is the potential of the area and what can we do in the Northern Quarter as it originally was, and expanding out now to the Camlin Quarter. And it's to allow us to generate ideas for the future use of the site and this wider area. And the development of this plan was the result of a lot of hard work on behalf of the URBACT local group in particular, and a huge credit must go to them. Many of them are here today, and I really want to thank them for their hard work and their input into the project from the very beginning. The second aspect of this event is to announce our intention to go to tender to appoint consultants for the preparation of an urban design and economic framework for the Camlin Quarter. So as you can see from the map there, the Camlin Quarter comprises a large area of the northern part of Longford town, approximately 55 acres. And this is the historic core of the town, but has suffered decline over recent years. And it's our hope that the framework will develop ideas and proposals for this area, including to improve the connectivity throughout the town and propose public realm improvements that will create a more pedestrian-friendly environment and a place that people want to spend time in. And we also want to ensure that the local communities are involved in this process and have their views represented as we develop the plan. And just as part of that, we have put some boards at the back of the room and some post-it notes there, and we would invite anybody here before they leave today to write on ideas or suggestions they have on the Camlin Quarter and put them up on the board there, and then we will look at them and we will collate them and include them for feedback in the design team when they are appointed. Thirdly, we are launching a Longford Town Walk and Trail brochure. So as you can see, the ULG have been very busy over the last while, and this is another initiative of the ULG. And they identified that when we were receiving large numbers of visitors to St Mel's Cathedral, which is a fabulous place to visit, it was renovated in 2014 following a devastating fire. People were coming, but they were going, visiting the cathedral, and they were getting back on the bus and leaving town because there was no information to encourage them to spend longer time and explain what there is to see here in Longford. And so we're delighted now that we have developed this trail and it's available, and it is a small step in building the tourism infrastructure in the town. And I'd like to thank particularly Sean Savage and Martin Morris from Longford County Council and Mary Fleming of Bristol Lemon for the design and artwork on the trail. And I would really encourage people, we're going to do a small little bit of it to include the Connolly Barracks at the end of this talk, but I would encourage people to have a walk around and have a look at the sites and see what there is here in Longford. And I think a lot of people, even the Longford people, will be surprised at how beautiful Longford is and what it has to offer. One, I suppose, personally from the point of view of working in the job, one of the key successes has been working with the community and engagement with the local community, and in particular in this project with the URBACT local group. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do in the regeneration team is to improve the quality of life through the work that we do for the people of Longford. But we need community support for it to be a success. We cannot do it on our own. It is a collaborative effort between the County Council and the local community. And the establishment of the Urbac Local Group, or ULG, was one of the fundamental elements of the European project in which we were involved. And it's brought together stakeholders from the public, the private and the community sector. And they've played a key role in the development of this integrated action plan. And from the first time I spoke to each one of them, and most of them weren't quite sure because I was talking about URBACT and maps and IAPs and weren't quite sure what I was talking about, but every one of them, when I explained to them, we're trying to do this to improve Longford, to get funding into Longford, to develop this area of the town. Each one of them gave full enthusiasm and engaged with the process, and they have supported the work that we have done. And I have to say it's been a pleasure to work with every one of them over the last 18 months. And I hope that that would continue now as we move forward into the urban design and economic framework, because their input is still vital for the development of the project. Wider community engagement is also very important in the regeneration of the area. And in order to try and improve this over the last couple of years and to give a wider section of society an opportunity to engage with the work we've done, we developed an app called Longford Newer, working with a social enterprise called Space Engagers. And this initiative was also led by the ULG, and illustrates the manner in which we work together in trying to address issues that we saw when we were working. And this is a community mapping project which allows members of the public post to the app on the past, the present and the possible of Longford. So it's just another tool to generate conversation on the positives and the possibilities of Longford. And it's still available, and I would really encourage everybody here to download it and to, as you walk around Longford and look at what are the sites, what are the possibilities here, give us ideas and feedback on what you think could be possible in the Camlin Quarter. And that will help form part of the public consultation also on the new urban design and economic framework. It is also very timely that we're having the conversation today on urban regeneration in Longford, as the Minister's just launched the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund. And we hope this framework that we're developing will identify projects that can be put forward under this fund and will act as a catalyst for the wider regeneration of Longford. And hopefully Minister English and Al Cussin may be able to give us further insight into this when they speak. And finally, I just want to show some pictures of the Camlin Quarter and just illustrate where Longford County Council have been proactive in this area already. And this project demonstrates the importance which Longford County Council places on this area of the town for driving forward the regeneration of the town. And some very positive work has been done, but it's very important from our point of view that it is plan-led, that there is an agreed framework there, and that will give confidence back to the community and to investors and to people that want to come and work and live and develop in this area. And the conversations we have started today through this MAPS project has acted as a stimulus, encouraging people to look at the area again. And we've already seen some positive moves being made, and we're hoping that we will continue that. And that is just Conley Barracks, where was the focus of the original focus of the project, just as a reminder for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lorraine, and I really appreciate the invitation to come here today. It's a very busy day. It's a very bright day, and it's a very exciting day because not only here in Longford, but this morning, Minister Murphy and our colleagues from right across government and right across the local government sector launched the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund, which Longford, I suppose, along with the Rural Regeneration Fund, being administered by Minister Ring's department, has a great opportunity to benefit from. But I'll come back to that in a minute. I know your county well. I know many of your towns and villages here. I have either driven or cycled, and indeed spent a lot of time on the water in and around your county. It is a surprising county. It's a county full of treasures and interests and so on, and more people need to know about it, and more people will know about it, I suppose, because of some of the projects that are underway here. Whether it is from Lochgowna or down to Newton Cashel, all of the villages and so on, the Royal Canal that traverses it, the Shannon Waterway, indeed, that sort of makes up its western boundary. It's a county full of attractions and interests and so on. It's also a county that I suppose has come through tough times. We all know of, I suppose, the challenges we've had to face after the economic crash of 2008, 9, 10 and so on. And we also know how, I suppose, it left a legacy in this county because of, I suppose, some of maybe the lesser sort of high quality examples of urban planning and development, a lot of the unfinished estates, I suppose, and that issue particularly was permanent. But Longford County, I'm happy to say, was the first county to really rise to the challenge in relation to addressing that. Previous chief executives and officials here in Longford County Council, together with the council, led the way in relation to recognising that was an issue, a legacy that had to be addressed and addressed quickly. And indeed, if we look at the Camlin quarter itself, and thinking, I suppose, of Battery Court and places like that, which were amongst the first of the unfinished housing developments that we had to focus on, it's great to see Longford County now, your local authority, the staff here that we know so well down through the years, really, I suppose, looking again and looking afresh at the potential of your town centre here, which has so much to offer. Whether it is for fortune or misfortune, I don't know. I'm married to a Mayo woman, and on all my trips from Maynooth in Kildare, where I live, down to Ballina to visit the in-laws, has to be done. I always knew Longford from sort of going up the main street, left at Longford Arms and straight out the road for Mayo. And it wasn't actually until that long ago that actually I discovered, of course, Barrack Street and I suppose the very beautiful quarter that has been developing around the Camlin now. And that's what I keep saying about Longford. Longford is a surprising place. It has all of these beautiful attributes in terms of its towns and villages and countryside that hopefully, I suppose, even with projects like Centre Parks and so on, people will discover more about. Centre Parks indeed is a project our department and I suppose our thinking would very, very, very much support. And the Camlin quarter, I suppose, from Connolly Barracks through to the Camlin River itself. Obviously, the great work that Longford County Council has been doing for many years now around the regional sports facility, the linear park along the Camlin River and so on. You are now discovering and you are now focusing on what makes a great place and what puts a place on a map from the point of view of attracting in the type of investment, the type of tourists or visitors and so on that are really, I suppose, mark out the successful places around our country. So we are absolutely fully supportive of the work that's going on with your integrated area plan and maybe just to focus for a minute or two now in relation to the urban regeneration and development plan or the development fund. So it's obviously part of Project Ireland 2040, the national planning framework and the national development plan. And one of the things that we were keen in terms of, I suppose, putting together that project with our colleagues in the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, and I have to say, with huge guidance and support from our ministers, Damien here, but also Minister Murphy, and right across government. In fact, I was saying to Simon Wall there from the county or the town architect from Mayo, I have never seen in my 20 years working in government the sort of the focus and the commitment around good planning, good placemaking, good urban and rural development from our current ministers and that. So there's been huge support. No other country in Europe has joined up a 20-year spatial plan and a 10-year capital programme, the first of two capital programmes in effect, to make, I suppose, that plan real. That is a real sort of mark of ambition and confidence for the future that I suppose now you're well poised to take advantage of. So, and again, maybe different from the spatial strategy, and thankfully, we didn't have so much focus when the National Planning Framework was being finalised around designation of places. My place is a gateway, or my place is a hub, or a county town, whatever it is. We didn't have that sort of focus because the National Planning Framework is a very, very different animal. But I think people are starting to realise that now from the National Spatial Strategy. It's not about setting places against each other in terms of you're one thing and another place is another thing. In fact, National Planning Framework, National Development Plan, Project Ireland 2040 is more of a toolkit. It's more of a series of mechanisms, funds, yes, and other instruments that places can use themselves to reinvent themselves and to make more use of the advantages and the strengths that you have locally. So it was with great pleasure that we launched the Urban Regeneration and published the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund last Friday. And it's one of four special funds which are under the NDP. We've had the Climate Change Adaptation Funds, Disruptive Technologies Funds launched by ministers in Department of Communications, Climate Action and Environment and Business, Enterprise and Innovation, URDF today, and the RRDF comes in the next few days. And we very much see all of these funds in effect giving you the funds, the resources, the mechanisms to reinvent your own places. And what a turnaround when you think about it. Not 10 years ago from when we were effectively bankrupt and we were dealing with unfinished housing estates. It's an incredible performance by any yardstick. But I suppose the degree to which we actually capitalise on all of that and learn from those mistakes and move on to a whole new sustained period and process of progress and development is about actually what you're doing here today. Looking at the centre of our towns and villages here in Longford, right across the country, and using the mechanisms that are there for you now to reinvent, reimagine, repurpose those locations. I'm always struck when I travel around your county, indeed, how you have made a fabulous job of so many of the villages. I mean, Arda, obviously, a location that has been an award winner in terms of tidy towns and so on, whether it is Ballinaleave, there's lots of different places. Clondra out the road in relation to, I suppose, what's been achieved with our colleagues in Waterways Ireland in terms of, reinterpreting a canal village. So a lot of the Longford smaller towns and villages have, I suppose, really sort of been turned around through great community work, support of your local authority, good planning and so on and so forth. Maybe Longford Town, as I suppose your county town and a key regional location, hasn't benefited as much from maybe that sort of thinking in the past. Maybe the focus has been about, the big industrial parks or the housing estates at the edges and so on, some successful, some not so successful. But this is now really a very clear statement from your authority that it's time to look at the heart of your town and I suppose the potential that it has in terms of rejuvenation. So our fund is open. The closing date will be I think it's the end of September later on this year. You have 3 months or so to put together proposals in relation to I suppose that represent a vision for the future of your town, a partnership, a synergy, pulling together the different funding sources, pulling together the public sector, pulling together the private sector, communities and so on, in a realistic but ambitious vision, if you like, for the transformation of your places. We're ultimately looking for 2 categories of projects, and this is all in a presentation that I'm sure, Lorraine, you can send around. I'm not using the presentation because nobody can see it in the back of the room, and so maybe it's better anyway just to hear it from me rather than trying to squint at the screen and look at the words. But we're looking for 2 categories of projects. We have €100 million nationally for next year, which is a not inconsiderable sum, and we're looking for shovel-ready projects, I suppose, that are really about urban regeneration next year. But we are also looking for category B projects, and these are really, I suppose, looking to develop a very strong pipeline of initiatives and projects which will unfold over the coming years and so on, bearing in mind that, I suppose, across the 4 funds, and we very much want to see people use the 4 funds in a coordinated and integrated way. Across the 4 funds, there's €10 billion available in direct exchequer. This is not recycled money or money taken from other. This is new money that's available for investment in places and placemaking out over the next decade. It is an unprecedented commitment by a government in relation to good planning and local and community development. So the fund is open. All of the details are on our website, www.npf.ie, and obviously on the Project Ireland 2040 website. I won't bore you with the details in relation to all the criteria and the marking and so on and so forth. Just to say this, that from our department's point of view and from my team's point of view, not that we have an endless team of resources and so on, but we very much want to work with you. We will be available to help you, to ensure that every part of the country maximises, I suppose, the potential that is available from these funds. And more importantly, and most importantly of all, that we make a lasting difference to our country and to the various different places and for our communities. Because all of this planning and placemaking and so on, very good and so on, it's very good for a planning person like me and so on, but it is fundamentally about improving conditions for our citizens, for our people and for our communities. So as long as we have that at our core, we won't go too far wrong. So Lorraine, thanks for the invitation, and I'll be here for the rest of the afternoon in relation to sort of fielding any questions or getting out and about and having a look at some of the ideas. There are loads of ideas I have in my head, but I mean, I'm just that official from Dublin. You know more about your own local communities and so on. Certainly I'd love to see the Royal Canal come back into the centre of Longford again and connect with Camlin in terms of the Greenway and I suppose bring that whole activity tourism and that whole sort of, I suppose, all the possibilities that creates, and so on. And I remember seeing some of the old photographs of when the Royal Canal Harbour was actually just down the road here and so on, and then obviously the railway kind of partly impacted on that and so on and so forth. So hopefully we will see that sort of, I suppose, possibility come back, and all of the good place making and so on that creates. Because you have a great town, you have a remarkable place here and so on. I know it well, been through it many, many times. And hopefully, I suppose, with the work that you're doing now, the engagement with the community, and I really, really hope that citizens, ordinary people, engage with this process, because I do think the planning process at times is a little bit too maybe associated with the officials and the experts and so on, so I do hope to see those post-its and ideas up on boards and so on from ordinary people, that ultimately the planning process is there to serve. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray, for the introduction, and thanks, Niall, for covering most of the stuff I have to cover as well. It's great, it saved me half my time anyway. But look, guys, first of all, it's great to be here. Thanks very much, and I'm delighted to pick one of the warmest rooms in Longford for today's occasion. I'm sure it was built for less fine days than today, but it's great to see a bit of sun anyway. So we'll keep it as long as we can have it for a few more weeks, maybe the rest of the month as well. We can't plan to guarantee that, but we're sure we can plan for the weather like that, and that's probably part of our planning process as well. So as Niall said, one of the funds is around the whole climate change and to plan for conditions of different types of weather over the years ahead as well. So again, first of all, today is about launching your own plan, your integrated action plan, and your military assets as public spaces, which I think is a great name. When I first seen the invitation to maps, I said, is this maps or is it something else? So I think it's clever enough actually to have that conversation around using your military assets and the important role they can have in developing public open spaces as well as developing their towns and our villages and our cities as well. So again, thanks to Lorraine and all the team for the invitation, and John as well, and for Michael Carrigy to make sure I came here and get me here on time as well, and for inviting me too. But Cahill, Louis McIntyre, again, Louis and Seamus as councillor as well, and here at the local area. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here and to have a chance to engage around your own plans and hopes and aspirations as well, because it's important that we do that, and that's what we're about. And all the different councils that are here across party too, we're very focused as political representatives, be it TDs or ministers or councillors and all the different levels, to work with communities like yourself and work with all interested players and stakeholders through the local authority to develop our own centres, our own towns, our villages and other areas into our cities as well. And that's what this is all about, putting together a plan. It's like your starting blocks, it's like your business case to set out what you want to achieve, what you want to do in the various parts of the town, in the various quarters, and certainly in the areas of dereliction that we looked at today. I had a chance earlier on to visit some of the spots with me and see the barracks and see the shopping centre, although I know there's a bit of movement there as well. But just to get a feel for the town, because as Niall said, we very often come through the town or through the city, or if someone's out the bypass, you might not always come through, certainly over the years on that journey. But it was often on a journey through here, which is a pity, because it's only when you actually take up the map and look at the walking tours, you have so much to offer, there's so much potential. And that's what we're trying to do here. And the whole aims of the different funds that we're announcing on the Project 2040 is to release that potential and to put you on a setting off your own ambition, but to help fund that with a combination of taxpayers' money and your own local money, your own local resources, through the local authorities, through enterprise, through the Chamber of Commerce, through the public groups that are here, bringing everyone together and to focus that time and money and a skill set you have as well. And I think, Lorraine, that's a lot of the work we've been doing through the ORBAC, is actually kind of having that conversation and making those plans, looking at urban centres. But also today, it's about that conversation, and it's about bringing the community together to have that focus around the starting plan of today and the plan for the future. And it's all we here in this room that can make it happen. Our job probably as ministers and TDs is to try to put pots of money together, but it's your own money, it's taxpayers' money that's made available to yourselves in a parcel of funds to try to develop your projects, your ideas, to help your town and your county as well. So I'm not looking for the job for Longford Tourism, that's Niall, but you can't have them yet, Louis, but if you want them as tourism officer, you can have them in a few years' time when we're finished these plans, you know. But again, I think, as Niall said, there's so much potential, and there's other speakers here more open than me will go into the potential of this area, and that's exactly what we're trying to harness and trying to do as well. So projects such as this integrated action plan are vital for our towns and cities, and can be seen as nothing but a positive step in making Longford a more vibrant town, a town that makes the best use of all available spaces and is more attractive for residents and tourists alike. And again, as tourists but also as residents, you want to make your towns a place people want to live in, to come back in and live in the centres of it, to live over the shop, but to spend time in, and to start a business in, to create jobs and to win investment. And that's what the whole idea of having these different funds is, to make your town more attractive, more accessible, and just basically nicer places to hang out, and that's what we're trying to achieve here as well. So as Niall has mentioned earlier, the government launched Project Ireland 2040, which again, it's an overarching policy and a planning framework for the social, the economic and the cultural development of Ireland. It sets the context and the impetus for bringing life and economic activity back to towns such as Longford. And again, with Project Ireland 2040, it's taken a long-term view of this country, of each and every county, each and every town and village, and see how do we best plan for that. How do we plan best for the next 1 million people living in this country? And we know that's coming. How do we best cater for the next 600,000 jobs or 500,000 houses that we need?
Just talking a bit close, some of the Baptists can't hear.
Okay, probably should a bit louder. But again, Project 2040 is about our national planning framework. It's about looking to the future to see how can we plan for all our cities, our towns and villages. And it's out of that then we have the different funds to bring a focus to it as well. Because having the long-term plan, setting out the targets and the aims of how to move the population around, where the jobs will be, where the people will live, that's one part. But then to make that happen, you have to back it up with money. And the second phase of our planning framework was the 10-year development fund, the capital development fund, which again is taxpayers' money. It's a targeting of 116 billion to fund the infrastructure, to fund the change you need right throughout the country to make our long-term planning happen. And that's why I'm delighted that it's a whole of government approach, bringing all our government partners together and working together under the direction of people like Niall. And I can tell you that Niall and his planning team put a lot of work into this over the last 3 or 4 years. And we did try to consult with people as much as we possibly could. And this is another part of that, having this local area plans, having these integrated plans that involve all of yourselves. Have the conversation, get your ideas. That we're covering all the aspects of this to make sure that we're covering from health and education to social housing and so on. And that's what we're trying to achieve here as well. So again, I'm delighted to be here to be part of that and to be part of the launch as well. The rejuvenation and the regeneration of our towns and villages is a major part of our work too. And the fund that we announced last week and that we had a workshop on launch today in Portlaoise with Minister Murphy, Charlie Flanagan and a few other government ministers along with Niall here, focusing in on the work of that fund. And Niall has outlined there's different projects over the kind of different focus, but initially over the next 3 or 4 months we're looking for shovel ready projects that are ready. They're category A, and then category B are projects that will fund through 19 and 20 as well. But there is about 100 million a year, but there's also the ability for multi-annual funding to make plans that will last a couple of years and to know that there are taxpayers money there in ring-fenced to make that happen, and to also for you to tap into other funds. But it's also very important that the local authority, through Lorraine and her team and everybody else here, are central to driving this and making it happen. We want everyone to come together, all the different community groups, the different chamber of commerces, the different commercial groups, retail, community groups and so on. But someone has to make it happen. And that's why you have these local teams, and that's why you have local authority taking a central role to make sure you can draw down the funds and actually make it happen, that you can see the results over the years ahead as well. I won't go into the whole vision because you have your own vision of what you want to achieve here. But it's about utilising space. And when you see, and certainly coming from an urban regeneration point of view, it's a great shame when you drive by and see empty buildings, or buildings that are falling apart, or left derelict for years. And the first part of bringing them back in is to have your own conversation locally. What do you want to use them for? How do you best utilise them? What should be in there? Does education, I see Christy down there, does education need something in it? From education ETV point of view, do you need a health facility? Do you need more town centre housing? Do you need accommodation for people of older years? Do you need some other community project based in the town centre? But again, have that conversation, tease it out, how best to use your buildings. And again, these funds then are to help you make that happen and to realise that ambition as well. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. Because again, Longford and all other towns are going to be growing, and going to be growing at a pace that we haven't seen for the last 10 years. We did see that pace a number of years ago, but we're back in now, and our job is to make sure that the next phase of development doesn't all happen on the East Coast, that we spread it out and spread it around. But a key part of that is that we do it in a plan-led way, not developer-driven, not just popping in a few houses in a field because it was easy on the edge of the town, but to look at town centres, how to really build them back up again. And if you're putting in housing, what else do you need? What's all the services? What's all the infrastructure to service that? And to service your existing housing and your existing community, and to piece it all together as well. And it's a great opportunity, I think, when you stand back for a while, which we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, in calmer times, to plan out the future. And now we have the national plan, then we'll have the 3 regional plans, and then you'll have county plans. And all these integrated plans that you have here at a very local level feed into that and make it happen. And again, as I said earlier on, Ray, it's like making a business case to win that money and win investment. If anybody here in business and you go to the bank to get a few pounds, can be easy in some cases, it's hard for most of us, you have to go with your plan on paper. You have to explain what you're going to do, and you're going to have to show results. So likewise, when it comes to these funds that Niall talked about there, you have to be able to show your plans, show your ambition, show what you aim to achieve. And your area action plans are a key part of that to make sure we can see it and track it and make it happen as well. And I've no doubt that you're going to be very successful as a town here and as a county in winning taxpayers' money, some of your own money back into a pot to make it happen, to be able to make this place even a lot better and to build that as well. So again, rather than drag on for too long, because there's much better speakers than I am here who want to give you their story, their journey, and I think it's important that we listen to that, because the best way we can make it happen for Longford and for this town is to listen to others who have made it happen. And I've listened to some of the great speeches over the last couple of years from Mary, but certainly from Simon as well, who have been able to tell their story. And very often a journey like this, and probably Lorraine knows this from being involved in the last couple of years with the Urban, is it's not just 1 or 2 years, it's long-term thinking, but making changes every year, so that eventually you can see the results over time, but that eventually it all comes together, and you have a new town centre you can be proud of. And again, as I said at the start, one that you want to invest in, invest your time in, invest your money in, and invest, tourism you want to invest in, but also commerce and chambers of commerce and people who want to invest for jobs will come and locate here. And again, that gives you the cycle you need to regenerate money again to keep the area going. So good luck with your work ahead. The funds are there, we're trying to make it happen, but our job is to work with you. And as Niall said, he's a very large team, don't mind, it's a big team up there in the department. They're available to work with you. But to be honest with you, it's probably a small bunch of people doing a hell of a lot of work. But they're very passionate, very into it. My job, and Minister Murphy's job, is a joy to work with these guys because they're long-term thinking. We'll have fights along the way too, and we'll all battle out for little bits and pieces, but it's very, very important here. The bigger picture is it's about good quality planning, integrating local communities, using space well, and bringing back in empty buildings, and that's what you're doing. So keep up the good work, and thanks very much for having me here today.
For inviting me to share our experience in Waterford. It's terrific to hear that the decision makers in the country are endorsing good public realm and putting funding in place. Unlike them, I did stop in Longford a few times. I was brought up in Cavan, and I think I won my first Irish dancing medal at a feis in Longford, so it has applied a place. I might dance if this doesn't go too well. So Lorraine, she's getting so. I was lucky enough to win a tender about 3 years ago for the redevelopment and regeneration of part of Waterford city centre. And like the Minister just said, this was part of really a 25-year programme that Waterford Council have been involved in. And we were very lucky to have really inspirational people, a bit like it sounds you have here in Longford, who worked and led council initiative developments. Our county manager, Michael Walsh, and the person I worked most closely with, a colleague, Rupert Maddock, who is also an architect, really was one of the first people, I think, in Ireland to get heavily involved in regeneration about 25 years ago. And it's interesting that he is now part of future developments in the city. He's no longer in architecture and planning, he's in future developments, future economic developments in the city. So I suppose that's my little 2 words for promoting architects in councils and helping with regeneration. So there's something wrong here technically, but I'll keep talking. The project I worked on, as I say, was part of a 25-year regeneration programme in Waterford. Waterford is a city of about 50,000, and the masterminds of this regeneration project had organised the city and its surrounds into a number of quarters, and developed 20 years ago the retail centre of the city. In more recent years, they developed the Viking Triangle, which has become a major destination, a tourist destination area in Waterford City. They're currently working on a culture quarter, and some people might have heard of major city expansion towards the North Quays. Our project was around an area called the Apple Market, and it really was not just an important square in the city, it also had a number of connecting streets. So it was an important piece to bring previous parts of regeneration together, as well as giving a new vitality and I suppose a new identity to this area of Waterford, which had been a place where people gathered, but over recent decades had suffered a lot of what a lot of our towns and cities are suffering from, an overdominance of cars and illegal parking and very little pedestrian-friendly areas, excessive cluttering, be it from electricity wires and traffic lights and dangerous crossings. So the pedestrian somehow in all of that was forgotten about. How are we doing? I think I will be doing this Irish dance. I'm glad I mentioned it. I really need a slide. Let me draw it for you. Is it going to be a problem or will I keep going?
No, we have.
Oh, we have. My God. I have to start again now. So I should have said there are 15 slides. I have the 15-minute version with me today, not the 3-hour one. You'll be all glad to hear. So this is slide number 1, Waterford in the southeast. And as I say, our project was one part of a 25-year regeneration for the city. It was mentioned earlier, it's never done. It's a dynamic affair, regeneration. It's all the time on the move, it all the time has to be renewed, and above all, it always has to be maintained. Is it right for forward?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an image of the Apple Market. Sorry for the glare, I hope some of you can see it. There are other seats if you need it. The Apple Market as it is today, it was open. This part of the project was finished almost a year ago, and it has become a gathering place. And the image there is of a local street theatre company, Spree, using it for the first time as part of their celebrations on the August weekend. Some of the topics I've covered today, but it's not a non-exhaustive list. The importance of people, the importance of research, the importance of having a design vision to give renewed creative identity to places. But I could go on forever about the importance of obviously funding, of people to maintain it, and above all of citizen ownership, because it has been mentioned earlier, obviously we want to increase footfall into our towns and cities, but it has been proven over and over again that if we don't do regeneration, that helps the people who live and work in the town, it will be non-sustainable. So number one priority is for the people of the place themselves. So these two images are actually borrowed from Waterford Council, and they show the idea of the 25-year, I suppose, development of the city into different areas. I've mentioned the tourism heritage node, the Viking Triangle, the central retail core developed in the 1990s, the culture node, which has currently been spoken about, and the North Quays development, which has currently been spoken about. Our remit was the evening and nighttime node, and also to link that node to the existing, to connect that area to the other parts of the city. So the diagram on the right-hand side, that arrow represents the retail spine of the city, and our project was on the kind of the southern end of that spine. So it had to act as a portal into the retail spine of the city during the day. At night time, it is surrounded by a lot of the pubs and restaurants in the area. So this space that we created had to somehow celebrate in a safe way a nighttime culture. So part of the brief was not only to do up the public realm with new paving and new lighting and better services, we also had to look at the design of an outdoor covered area in the Apple Market that would allow for a multitude of usages. I can't think of too many examples in Ireland that are permanent features. I can think of some that are umbrella type spaces that go up and down, or tensile structures, but this is one of the first times that we've covered in an old square in Ireland, and given the weather we normally have, actually it's been great recently, it's kept the sun off us, it's not a bad idea for some of our towns and cities. So the first important area is obviously the research that you conduct, and Lorraine has mentioned the historical value of the Camlin quarter. I mean, Waterford, before you do anything in public realm, you've got to understand the layers of history that go into a place. And in some way, good public realm can help celebrate some of those historical artefacts, or historical laneways, or historical squares. In our case, our site was between two sets of ancient walls, the Viking walls of the city and the extension to those walls in the Norman walls, which featured later on. The three large arrows there were showing that our scheme, not just the Apple Market, but the streets had to connect back to the Viking Triangle, where Reginald's Tower is located, which really was the start of the city. The city was a Viking city, and it grew from a small fortification in that area and expanded out in a radial fashion. So the lady on the right, I looked at her a lot during this project, and she is one of the people who sold apples in this Apple Market area. There were lots of little huts like that, and lots of little women smoking pipes, looking in at the pubs around the area. That photograph was taken back in the early 1900s. So our public realm had to somehow celebrate the history of the area, but at the same time provide something that was contemporary and would increase footfall in the area, hopefully mitigate against urban decay, and most importantly was something that the people of Waterford could celebrate themselves. This is a picture taken from the early 1900s that shows the Apple Market, a very beautiful image. There are lots of images similar to this of Longford and other towns in Ireland, where we see our public squares are places for gathering. We see that there are no motor cars, we see that there are no overhead wires, we see that there's not a plethora of traffic lights, bins, you name it. It's a kind of a very peaceful, the only clutter is people, and that's really what we want. What's important in this also, and it's important in good public realm, is that certain views and wayfinding are maintained. So this space has kind of wayfinding views towards spires that exist in the city. So again, wayfinding and connections don't always have to be just made with yellow lines on streets. They can be visual, they can be made visually. So some of the challenges, this is the image, the same image of the Apple Market when we won the tender. It's still a very beautifully proportioned triangle. It's not a square actually. Most of the squares in Waterford are triangles. So it had a lovely scale to it. It was primarily some small commercial pubs and restaurants on the ground floor, lots of empty units overhead, which is a real crisis situation in a lot of towns. Some small areas of residential pockets that you can see going down in the back of that photograph. But the space is predominantly, this was taken early in the morning, so if it had been taken the photo later in the afternoon, you would see an awful lot more cars, taxi rank, double yellow crossing lines, very unsafe pedestrian crossings, signage, bins, people illegally parked. The few premises that were working well, they tended to extend to the back. They didn't open out onto the square, so there were no seats or tables addressing this lovely little space. Maintenance was an issue, and I suppose a loss of identity. People gathered here in the evening time, but it became known a little bit as a rough area. Lighting was poor, and it didn't connect with any other parts really of the city in a clear, coherent way. So there were some of the challenges we faced. These are some of our earlier drawings, and the plan on the top left shows some of the early drawings we made. The historical routes that I alluded to in some of the earlier maps, we had to keep them, obviously. We didn't change any of those existing historical routes. In fact, we celebrated them. We put high-level glazing, which means that they get good light into those streets. They become important. The plan shows that our outdoor flexible space follows the shape of the Apple Market itself. It's triangular in shape. I mentioned that this had to become the portal to the retail spine of the city. So this canopy is like an entrance into the retail spine, and it's also an entrance into a proposed new shopping centre, which is to be located in proximity. The image on the top right shows one of the very early sketches that we did for this outdoor area. We wanted a space that was what we called shared surface. Shared surface is it's where you eliminate footpaths and curbs, and it's the street follows the natural topography of the land. And by doing that, you are allowing pedestrians to take more ownership of this space. It's also, well, the debate is out whether it's good or not good for universal access. Obviously, for universal access, the fact that there are no curbs is a good thing, because people who are wheelchair users or visually impaired people don't have any curbs or steps to navigate. But there's also an argument that guide dogs apparently prefer a curb. They're trained to recognise a curb. So in some situations it is appropriate to use shared surface, but the debate is still ongoing. In this case, it has worked out quite well. We still had to have traffic to navigate its way through this. So the design of our public realm and our canopy had to facilitate bus routes going through it during the day, as well as articulated trucks to service the new shopping centre. We worked with a traffic management plan, and at the time it would have been just inconceivable to have stopped traffic going through this space, because People needed deliveries, people needed to get to the shopping centres, it was a bus route, and the change would have been too great. But what's interesting now is that the users of this area are asking for cars to be eliminated. When we say that there are no cars, it's never no cars. There's always delivery, there's always cars up until maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. So it's interesting that the people have embraced this space and are now calling for the eradication or the reduction of cars and vehicles in the space. The bottom right hand corner is one of the first 3D images we did. I'll mention the importance of people in a later slide, but we held a number of workshops and meetings with the local communities down in the area. We deliberately went downtown, we deliberately went upstairs in the local pubs to get as many people as we could from the area to be part of the workshops that we were conducting. Rupert Maddock, the architect behind a lot of the regeneration strategic visions for Waterford, he's in that, and that's why I put in that slide, because I really feel he's somebody who needs recognition for the great work he's done in regeneration in Waterford and beyond. I'd also say that another important thing when you're considering public realm is quality materials. In Waterford, we developed a palette of materials that has been used now on all new public realm projects. So there's a kind of a continuity. If you can imagine a house full of very expensive carpets, but they're all different and they clash in colour, it's not good. But this city has used a number of quality materials, including Kilkenny Carlow limestone and a very good granite from Portugal. So it's the same materials used in slightly different ways throughout the city. And it's calming, and it helps with connectivity. So I would urge you to consider quality materials from the beginning. Safety is also an issue as well in public realm, but good public realm has been shown to flush out a lot of antisocial behaviour. Because if you have good spaces, people will congregate in those spaces, and if you have permeability and connectivity with good public realm, you don't create cul-de-sacs, which can sometimes become dark and worrying corners of our cities. I don't know if this video works, does it? This is a short video. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, but does the video work? Okay, this would have been a video showing you a kind of a walkthrough that we did for all the stakeholders, showing the progression through the city, through this new space. It's also set to a lovely piece by Talking Heads, so sorry, you'll have to come again when it's working. No worries. So the material, just to say something about materials as well, this is not the Apple Market, just in case you think it is. We had to find materials for this outdoor canopy that we could afford and that were a little bit special. I had been on a trip to Chicago in 2013, and I was really taken by this fantastic sculpture piece by Anish Kapoor in a new park in Chicago. And really its beauty is not just its form, but the fact that it's reflective. So we borrowed that idea of reflection. I'm not the first person to have used reflective materials. Lots of architects have used reflective materials. But we're in an age of selfies, and people are just attracted by reflections and taking photos. So we used on this canopy, we have the underside of it is completely reflective, and that has really just been a very engaging process with people. Kids come, they have competitions for taking selfies. It creates interesting illusions. It was a material that we developed locally with Medite, who have a factory in Clonmel, and Medite is normally a board that's used for most of our kitchens, and you can veneer it or paint it. In our case, we just put a reflective foil on it, so it's nice to think that it was a local material that we used. This particular project was a very expensive polished stainless steel, which would have just meant we would have done nothing else on our project apart from probably a few panels. So sometimes you've got to do a little bit of research and detective work, and with local companies you can come up with creative solutions. Good public realm also involves a lot of disruption. and so it's critical to have good communication at all times. We were very lucky with our main contractor had a great liaison person, so every day he went round all the people in the area, gave them updates, newsletters. This particular piece was being installed in a piece of the city that had to keep functioning 24 hours a day, with entrance to all those commercial properties. So we asked that there be no hoarding, so there was a transparent hoarding around it. So it became a little bit like monkeys in the zoo. People were really interested in seeing this project develop, which as architects, it's something that we were really proud of. And I know I worked for many years in France on a lot of large projects there, and on weekends, going to see public projects was something that people did with their families and their kids. And there would be display boards and interactive boards. So people are interested, so it's really good to keep people informed of what we're doing in our towns and cities. So I'm not saying it was all good. I got lots of old fellas coming up to me and saying, what are you at, and all the rest. But I think overall it was a positive experience. We set up a Facebook, we used social media also to communicate the changes that we were making. And when we were putting in the first column to support this new canopy, it got 33,000 views within 4 days. And some of those were from people who lived abroad but were interested in what was happening in Waterford. So communication and selling the message and keeping people involved in the process is very, very important. And I can't overemphasize, it's been mentioned already, that these are places for people. So the images here show on the left, for the last 20 years we've run a Festival of Architecture in Waterford, and I've been heavily involved in that. And we use it usually as a moment to try and capture ideas, a little bit like you're doing today with the post-its. And I suppose with this project, after winning it, we went another step and went deeper into the community and engaged with people at many levels. We interviewed them, we had workshops with them, we worked with the councillors, we worked with the council team. And then on the top right, this was my own design team, made up of terrific engineers, quantity surveyors, people who helped us with lighting, people who helped us with traffic management, you name it. It was very, very much a team effort. The bottom right was one of the panels that we produced by 4 meters by 4 meters, and we had them dotted around the city. And again, we wanted even children on the street to understand what public realm was about and what we were doing in the city. So we tried to make it very simple, the fact that we were spending a lot of money on new trees and new paving, and we calculated the amount of steel and sculptures and all the rest that we were doing in the city. Again, it was an effort. I'm not saying it was totally successful. With the next projects, I'll probably do it slightly differently. But it was a way of trying to harness interest amongst the community and all stakeholders. So these are some images of the space in use. I mentioned earlier, for this to work, it has to be sustained by the local community. So these are images of different events that have happened there. We've had Viking festivals, and we've had hurling matches, large screens, and pop concerts, and children's festivals. But one of my own favourite images is just the top right, which was taken from the cherry picker when the project was nearly finished, and it was early enough in the morning, and Waterford is just waking up to the 12-month-long sunshine that we get down there. And you can see people are just wandering through on their way to work, and you've got this kind of very calm space, and that reflective ceiling, really it's just reflecting a moment in the life of Waterford, whether it's a large concert like the left-hand photo, or whether it's a quiet morning, people are coming through quietly. It's they're all actors on the stage of this city, I suppose the best way to describe it. You're missing another little short video, but that, oh no, you're not missing a short video. Christmas, for one of the first times, the local businesses actually took over Christmas lighting and decorated the space themselves. We had done, which was a good idea actually when you're doing public realm, to think of extensions of the public realm. We had done some plans for what it could look like at Christmas or different types of events that might happen in the place. So it is good that you allow for flexibility. Although it's one big open space, we've got pop-up electrical points, pop-up water points. They're all hidden in the ground, but it allows for a multitude of things to happen without it dominating the space. So, a bit too much lighting for my life, but anyway. And I think what's interesting in this space, now all the pubs and the restaurants have seats outside. So for a place where everybody was developing to the back of their premises, they're now all out in the space. We would love if they were all out in the centre of that triangle, but there are a number of obstacles to go through yet. Bouncers like to have people glued to the outside of the bars and restaurants for security reasons. The guards haven't quite yet worked out how you share a zone in the centre with lots of different people drinking or eating in lots of different establishments. We know it's been done in other cities in Europe where the climate allows for it more. So I think bit by bit we will see that develop more as people kind of sitting everywhere in that space. I think that could be it. Oh no, you're missing one last video, but I'm sure you're not really interested. It was on the 6 o'clock news. Not just because we did this, I think, very nice design, but it was because they put up a big screen and Waterford nearly won some really important hurling match. It was just the weekend of the opening, so we were very lucky. I wish you the best of luck with your... Oh, there's one more slide actually. I wish you the best of luck with your... oh, you are getting it. That's it, that much. That's it. Finally, on the left is really a name of all the people who were part of my team and the stakeholders and the contractor. We were very lucky with them all, and an important quote from Jane Jacobs, who was really one of the founders of modern thinking in urbanism. And cities have the capability, and you can put towns as well, obviously, of providing something for everybody only because and only when they are created by everybody. So I wish you really much success with the Camlin Quarter Master Plan, and I think this is a terrific beginning, conservations on urbanisms. So thank you again.
I'll make myself a little bit of space. And I'll talk to the screen when it comes up. As I said, my name is Simon Wall. I'm a community architect employed by Mayo County Council, and I've been based in the town of Westport on the ground with the community for the past 22 years. And my job has been managing the built environment as part of the town management team. We're a little bit unique in terms of county councils that we do have local authority architects that are not just doing capital projects, but they're actually doing planning, and they're based full time within the municipal districts. I am one of those type of architects, have been for the past 20 years, and we're rolling them out within the other municipal districts. But to start off, can everyone hear me down the back there? Am I okay in terms of projection? Great, okay. So I'm the town architect to the town of Westport, and really just talking about rural Irish towns, you know, what is Westport as a small rural Irish town? We're based on a small, we're nothing essentially. We're a small town on a small island, off a slightly larger island, of an ever expanding Europe, I used to say, but perhaps it's contracting at the moment with Brexit. But just to survive as a rural Irish town, as Bono says in the song, you're almost running to stand still. And you have to punch above your weight to survive, because all the business and economy is going east into Dublin. So how do you do that? It's all about cooperation. It's the local authority acting as a framework, leading from behind, putting together the volunteer groups, the chambers, the hotels and businesses, just like you are today as a collective consciousness for the town of Longford. I suppose that the first thing we did about 20 years ago, we tried to identify what are Westport's dual drivers. We're very fortunate to have an American multinational in town, and they manufacture the entire planet supply of Botox. Do you know what Botox is? But I thought you might say that. Well, the great thing about Botox is it gives us about 1,000 jobs in the town. And you know, if you're Tom Cruise in California, if you're on East End or you're on the West End in London, your Botox is 100% guaranteed Irish. So that's why we're always smiling. And the other big thing that drives us is tourism. Tourism is very important to us. And the Celtic Tiger has allowed us build a lot of bed nights, which in turn bring a lot of people in and give spin, economic spin into the town centre. And I suppose, I'm not sure how easy it is to see this, but Westport is a planned estate town nestled in the shadow of Croagh Patrick, and it's an estate town designed by the Brown family of Westport House. And Westport House is a big tourism draw. We reckon it brings in about €50.7 million into the county per annum, because 60% of the people coming to County Mayo, the primary reason is to visit Westport House, and that's their spend. So it's a really important economic draw for us. The aerial shot of the town, the historic town core is 3 miles inland, and there's another town at the harbour, the quay area, which is on the coast. And in the middle you have Westport House and its domain. And slowly the two towns are amalgamating into one in a horseshoe shape. There's a conurbation, as they'd say in the States. And that's my job, to structure how that built environment happens and what goes in there. This is a view of the town core. We're very fortunate that historically the Browns, when they planted out day one on a greenfield site, made it into a series of architectural civic spaces that interlinked in a journey that brought you up to the gates of Westport House and through the landscape where you glimpsed through copses of deciduous trees the front facade of the house, and ultimately got up to the front door, and you knew you were in I suppose the domain of someone very important. But what's nice about the main civic space is the octagon and the clock area, and particularly the river. They make for very pleasant places and give us a very good quality of life. And indeed you have a lot of those spaces here in Longford yourselves, because you were a laid out town from day one. But one of the biggest gestures they did is the Carabeg River. They canalised the river. It used to meander in an organic sort of haphazard manner. They canalised it into 2 lakes, which led you up on the visual axis with the front door of the house and brought you into the domain itself. The second area, which is 3 kilometres away, is down at the harbour, and that was generated by a lot of Section 23 tax designation, which happened about 15 years ago. And it was tax write-offs essentially for holiday home accommodation. And what we tried to do is bring all the holiday homes into one area, and apartments and hotels down at the harbour area. So we're not putting holiday residential components into existing residential areas, but in the wintertime they'd be empty, have negative social connotations. So we tried to put all the pubs and the clubs in one area beside the ocean, and it has worked pretty much very well, and the entrance into Westport House there. And we have greater plans in the future for a marina and to expand that. We're Maura, I haven't met you before, but I've seen your work, and it's wonderful, it's very inspiring, as well as your Irish dancing. This is our latest public realm space in the town centre. It won the RAI People's Choice Award in 2016, but we built it on the foot of another competition with the Irish Times, where they were looking for the best place to live in Ireland. So what we've discovered in Westport over the years is, in terms of entering competitions, is very good. It galvanises a community very quickly. You put the best foot forward, and it brings success, and success breeds success, and you get multipliers. So we're perceived currently as being quite a successful town, having won a number of awards, including this one. But this wasn't always the case. This is Westport back in the 1980s, the main civic space, the octagon, and it's completely underperforming. And what's interesting about this is not in your great-grandparents' time or your grandparents' time. This is within living memory. This is what Westport was like 25 years ago, and it was completely underperforming. And coming up to the millennium, we were wondering, are we going to die as a town? Are we going to die on our feet? Are we going to change and try and survive and thrive? So the seminal moment was coming up to the millennium. We decided that we would, instead of building a piece of sculpture or etching our names on a piece of stone, that we would commission an intellectual gift for the town. So in other words, we brought together planners, engineers and architects and put together an image-led integrated action plan. Could I have your one there? Just what you're doing now. We commissioned a plan like this, and we said it was about 30 or 40,000 at the time. It was very expensive, but we felt this would harness development into the future. We knew we were getting Section 23 tax designation. We knew finances were going to come in. We didn't expect the Celtic Tiger. So it came over the hill was a really strong economic, potent engine. And we put this plan on the back of it like a saddle, and we harnessed it to the extent that the Celtic Tiger became a very positive experience for the town, which is not something that said a lot around the nation. And Westport 2000 dealt with the really big things, where new streets, new plazas, where new residents should go, where important civic buildings should be, right down to the small things like signage. So it covered the whole gambit. But this is one illustration from our image-led integrated action plan, showing the town at the time. The white buildings were all the existing buildings. We knew we had oodles of brownfield sites in the backlands. They're industrial sites that buildings had been demolished on, and they were dormant in the backlands. And instead of expanding out into the rural countryside, what we tried to do as a local authority, we put a compulsory purchase order in lots of backlands. And that gave us areas to start developing these master plans as part of our integrated action plan, and show where new car parking could go, so we could decrease the amount of car parking in the streetscape, bring it into the backlands, and create new public realm spaces. Also where we get new streets with commercial on the ground floor, and we have residential on the upper floor, bringing communities back into the town that had left the town core in the 40s, the 50s and the 60s out into the suburbs, where towns, suddenly rural Irish towns, were dying after 6 o'clock because everyone was driving out of the town centre. So we're trying to reverse that and bring people back in. And another thing, what we tried to do, that was looking at the really big things, new car parking here and here, down to the really small things like signage. The plan also covered that. And at the time, say 20 years ago, coming into Westport, really most junctions had over 30 illegal signs on them. They were growing like invasive species of plant out of the hedgerow. And it took about 2 years, but essentially we took them all the way in the back of a truck after a lot of consultation in the hotels, the B&Bs and all the various stakeholders. But if you put all the signage you remove flat on the ground, you'd remove about an acre. Now individually this doesn't make a big difference, but collectively it starts to have a very large impact. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is a junction. It's not in Longford, Armayo, it's in County Clare actually. But you see how irrelevant signage gets after a while. Another thing Westport 2000 looked at, our plan was planting. And this is the way we used to plant it, Victorian style, monoblock, single species planting. We did very well, and we won the National Tidy Towns with this. And what's very interesting when you win the National Tidy Towns is central government get awfully interested in you. And they start sending you off as the national champions to different places around Europe to compete with the best in Europe. And we ended up in Limoges in France, and they're very good, that municipality. They have their own horticulturists and their own glass houses where they grow their stuff. And we were out in the pub there one night, and I took these photographs out, and I said to the main gardener, Pierre, I said, do you like our planting in Westport? And he said, no, I do not like it. And I said, gosh, I'm sorry about you. And he said, well, Simon, we will come to your lawn, and we'll come next year, and we will plant for you. So we all thought this was great, had a few more Irish coffees and went home. But sure enough, January came, Pierre rang on the phone, and he says, we're coming, you have to pay for the diesel and the bulbs. And I said, that's great, come on over, we have a team ready for you. So the lads arrived, they planted all the bulbs, we gave a few Irish coffees again and sent them home. And we didn't think much about it till the heat came on. And all of a sudden, all our public areas where the French had planted with us, these sort of flowers started to come up. It's very popular in the continent, it has never been done in Ireland before. And you had things like decorative cabbage, beetroot, sugar beet gone to seed, and all sorts of stuff like that was coming out. And it just shows you how beautiful a traffic island can be. In most towns in Ireland, traffic islands are reflective coloured paint and plastic boxes guiding traffic around. So traffic islands can be beautiful as well. And with the planting in all our public spaces, we probably spent about 4,000 or 5,000. You can spend 2 million on a new road between Castlebar and Westport, and no one gives a damn. You spend about 10 grand on planting, and you're the world's best. So it's all about the perception, how local authority spend money as well, and getting good PR gains. That's another traffic island in the town centre. Sometimes they become performance spaces. You get buskers and people dancing out there, different groups. Another thing we started doing when we had our new plan is we started offering colour schemes. I, as the community architect, would design a colour scheme free for anyone if they came into me, but all they had to bring was a photograph of their building and the neighbouring properties on both sides. I designed one scheme. If they didn't like it, I designed a second or a third scheme. And the actual colour wasn't that important. It was that they weren't getting the first bucket of magnolia they had underneath the staircase, which inevitably all the buildings ended up being yellow. And colour is fabulous because you spend about €400 on your facade painting your colour, and people say, gosh, your premises are great, you invested a lot of money. So you get a lot of bang for your buck. Whereas if you did a fit out on the inside, spend 30 grand, people are indifferent about it. So colour is really quick gain, great value for money, and it really lifts the town, and it starts a chain reaction of other people doing colours as well. So you can see here before and after, about €300 later, it's really lifted that premises. And I was saying, you can't really go wrong with colour either. And it's just all about repainting your building every 2 to 3 years. This is during the Celtic Tiger. Tom Braun came in to me. He said, Simon, I have this colour. It's lime green, bright yellow, fluorescent pink and orange. And I said, my God, will it work? And it's one of the nicest colour schemes of the Tiger. So it's all as well about changing your colour every 2 and 3 years. It's all about change and presenting your buildings. Another thing we started doing when planning applications are coming in during the Tiger period is conditioning out the plastic and metal windows and replacing them with sliding sash windows. And we only did that if it was a large project and the project could carry the cost of that. And it starts making a difference in your architectural conservation areas with the correct windows in. And again, individually it doesn't make a big difference, but collectively it starts having a big impact. And over that period, we probably replaced about 300 windows over the shops in the town centre. And it was very effective in terms of presenting our architectural conservation areas in the correct way. Any new buildings that were in infill sites in the town centre, this was a gap in the streetscape. We ensured when the application came in that the building's massing matched its neighbouring property, natural slate roof, tight gutter fascia details, sliding sash windows, and we don't allow any projecting signage as much as we can try and eliminate it, or projecting lighting on stalks. What we try and do is get the lighting built into the cornice of the shop front. And then we don't allow any security shutters because they just become an aluminium canvas for graffiti. But sometimes banks or jewellers insist on it, so we had a perforated screen and run it behind the glazing. So in the evening time there's animation on the shop front, and you can look in and you can shop in the evening time. So it makes the whole thing more active and more positive during night time. We also had a lot of old stone buildings that were derelict in the backlands. And this one was just 4 walls. It had no interior floors and no roof. A carpenter owned it, and he said, what can I do with this? He came in for a pre-planning meeting. And we said, why don't you put your carpentry workshop on the ground floor, get 2 offices on the middle floor, so you get a rental income on the mortgage that you've purchased, that you've taken out to refurbish the building, and put your residence on the top floor. And he put a double height space in the front on what he calls his New York style loft apartment. So it's classic, going back to living over the shop. You have your premises below, and you have a little bit of income, and it secures a future for that building, which is a protected structure. But we did that many times in the backlands in the town centre and brought residences and people in to the town core. We also looked, there's a lot of land in the town centres and the backlands. We have really long gardens along here, and we felt they're not of much use anymore. People tend not to grow as much in the back gardens, and they're all going derelict. So we as a local authority provided a social housing scheme here. And then we, the private sector, provided another block, a secondary terrace in the backlands, and ultimately they'll all connect together. And this was for a housing association in the UK. We brought back people that were living in bedsits and Cricklewood. In the evening of life, they wanted to come back here, and they're within walking distance of the pharmacy, the shop, and the church, and they don't need a car. But you're getting people right back into the town centre. Some of the bigger schemes we did where we had to want greenfield sites. What we did with this one, we used an old-fashioned planning tool, which is essentially almost a Georgian-type square. We reduced the size of all the back gardens, and with the space we got from that, we made a big green space in the centre. And so everyone looked out, and they could see the kids playing, so there's very good passive surveillance there. You also have 2, 3, 4, and 5-bedroomed units, so you get multi-generational occupation. If they're all 3-bed semi-Ds, you only get young couples starting off. So you get grandparents, large families, small families, and some office space here. So if you need to rent an office space and you're close to your home, you're walking back and forth. And we connect that to the greenway. We've linked about 70% of our residential areas with walking and cycling greenways. So if you're a child and you want to go to your neighbour's house, you don't have to get a lift for your parents in the car. You can walk in the greenways and you're safer, you can cycle. So it's made the whole town a lot more permeable. This is the Octagon right in the town centre here. And on the left-hand side, this is a 9-acre site. And during the Celtic Tiger, we got a planning application on this site for 9 bungalows. And we refused it on the grounds that it was too low a density. It was probably the only development in the Celtic Tiger period that was refused for being too low a density. And it went to appeal from Board Planola, an oral appeal, and we won it. But we eventually acquired the land. And what we did with it is we designed a social and affordable housing scheme in a nice crescent here. And one section we sold off for a primary healthcare centre, and we linked it up to the greenway here. So when the scheme is finished, I know it's a little dark, you have a nice radial crescent of social and affordable housing, the whole community within walking distance of the town centre. If you don't have a car, it doesn't matter, you're very close to the town core. and an important health centre here, all linked up to the Greenway. There's about 66 residential units, a primary healthcare centre, a community building, and that would have been 8 or 9 bungalows. So it's important how we use these very precious sites in the town centre. You're going to get one chance of developing them, and they have to be developed at the right densities. And those densities should be higher than we've been dealing with in the past in terms of standalone houses on the edge of towns. And that's what we've done here. We really expanded the town at the same density at which it was developed during the Georgian period. Going back to Westport 2000 there, you can see where we have indicated where all the new development should be in the backlands. And this is what happened in reality. If you take the main streets in the town, you could only walk in the main streets 20 years ago. You couldn't get into the backlands. And every time a developer came in for planning permission, we insisted that he provided a pedestrian routeway through and gave him higher densities in the backlands, so you get new residential and commercial on the upper floors, a pedestrian routeway through. Where the blue circles are, is we as a local authority put compulsory purchase orders on the brownfield sites in the backlands, and for the short to medium term we provided lots of car parking to allow us to pedestrianise more on the historic civic spaces. And so now, instead of just walking on the main blocks, there's a whole new series of pedestrian routeways crisscrossing the town centre, and a lot more residential and a lot more commercial. So instead of expanding out at low density, we've been trying to develop the town core. So that was the direct implications of having a plan. All our new streets in the backlands are pedestrian only. And this is what happens when streets are pedestrian. People start spilling out in the evening and having their lunch and their dinner. You get residential on the upper floors. Acoustically, it's a lot better to live in because main streets are very noisy these days. We have residential on the upper floor, commercial on the ground floor. Very little antisocial activity because at night time you have passive surveillance. If people are living on the upper floors, they're looking out, they're policing it. It's when people don't live above premises in the town centre that you get more antisocial behaviour. And again, car parking right behind, so there is immediate access for the car as well. This is just a simple intervention on the octagon. We revamped the pavement, so when we did it, we took out 2 car parking spaces. And in taking out those 2 spaces, we provided this projecting area. We have a disabled access. We've put in a decorative lamp standard, and we've undergrounded all the overhead wires. And this could have been 2 vans parked outside here years ago all day, but now you have a view of this lovely Georgian building with Victorian alterations. And you start providing a quality of public ground space, even though it's very modest. And if you do that 50 or 60 times around the town centre, it starts making it a very desirable place to live. The car is always that big chestnut in terms of taking it out of the town centre. Back in 2004, we looked at our main street. This is our Grafton Street, essentially, Bridge Street, and we felt it was underperforming. A lot of hard surfaces, and it was completely dominated by the car. And you'd want to be an athlete to get from one side to the other, even on a good day, not to mind a rainy day like this. And so we said, what are they doing in the continent? What are they doing in Britain? And they were pedestrianising completely. So we got together with the community, said, what if we pedestrianise the street? And it was too big a risk just to do it once, and it may not work. So we said we'd have a trial. So we pedestrianised the street for 4 days on a June bank holiday weekend. And it went from this to this. So you can see, now the weather was good, which helped. But we also, at the time, someone mentioned that putting trees on the streetscape would be nice, it would soften it. So luckily enough, we were building our sewage treatment plant at the time, and the contractor gave us these sewer pipes for 4 days. And so they're big unused sewer pipes now. And the Tidy Towns painted them North Italian terracotta red. And we put them on forklift pallets. And at 6 a.m, there was 2 sets of forklifts dropping these lovely trees like marching Roman sentinels going down the streetscape. And it really was a wonderful thing. People were coming out with wines and cheeses and teas and coffees. It really made the whole thing very continental and gave it great quality of life. But the big issue we had, there was 1.5 hour traffic jams on all the approach roads. So we discovered we couldn't immediately completely pedestrianise, but we could take away some space. But I love this photograph here with the cheese and the wine, because see this lady here wearing a sleeveless fur coat. That's how you know it's a Celtic Tiger photograph. But I'm reassured by the minister they're coming back. So really, it was really a very special day. So in the end, we had to have a compromise scheme. We ended up putting in the trees because they're very successful, reducing the amount of car parking space, and also in the town centre with our backland routeways, the street was long and narrow, and what we did is, because there was no big square or heart in the middle of it, where the main pedestrian crossing is, we widened it and framed it with 4 large semi-mature trees. And so that's the main crossing in the centre. You know, we have the surface of the pavement and the road the same, so the cars psychologically slow down. And I'm standing in one archway across to the other, looking at the pedestrian routeways. So, and as well as that, then we put in trees as well. And you know, when I came to local authority first 20 years ago, we'd buy a small tree, you know, the girth of an old 50p piece, and we'd spend £400 on a tree guard, and the drunk comes out of the pub and he snaps it on you. And we discovered, you know, we could reduce our vandalism, which is the drunk coming out of the pub, by 95% if we discarded with the tree guard and spent that money on buying a tree never less than the girth of a coffee mug. So the tree is about €500. Bring it in semi-mature. So when this tree was planted, this photograph is only 2 months later. So that's the size you've got to bring trees in to make an impact. And look what happens when we plant a tree in the streetscape. This is the one car parking space that's taken away by the tree, which is 2.5 by 5 metres. And look what happens. You get a tree on the streetscape, it softens it. You get parents and kids pulling across with a buggy. You get a jeweller coming out and he's selling merchandise, and you get a lamppost, and you underground the overhead wires. So that car parking space is making your town very positive. It's working a lot harder for your town than this car parking space where the red car is. On you know, exact same spaces, but look what this is doing, the positivity it's bringing to your town. Now your car is the friend. It's about where you put the car, in the backlands, where you acquire more space. But it allows you to free up the main historic civic spaces and push the car a little bit out. So take away 1 space, look what you get. Take away 5 or 6 spaces, and look what you get. Take away 40 or 50 spaces, and look what more I got. It's a really important civic space that is a sentinel, in terms of cultural sentinel, in terms of Waterford's new presence within the national consciousness. I was given a talk once, there was an American guy, and I put these 2 slides off him. This could be Longford, it could be Waterford, possibly Westport. We're not quite as big. On Christmas Eve, you think you're really busy because the place is packed with cars. There's cars everywhere. The tills must be chinging. But in reality, most car journeys have just 1 person in the car. And the people here are very interesting, but it's the space between them. That acreage could be working a lot harder for your town. So the car's your friend. It got me from Westport to here in 2 hours, but it's about where you put the car. And the more you take the cars at the town centre, the more successful your town becomes, and the irony, it attracts more cars. So the car is very good, but it's how you manage the car. So all those little things I've been talking about collectively, which are very small, let's see the difference it makes with the town's main civic space over 3 centuries. So this is the main civic space, the Octagon, in the 19th century, very pedestrian friendly, not a car to be seen. Social utopia. Every family lives above the premises below. There's so many kids packed into the upstairs of all those houses. Every street has its own football team. Every street has its own bonfire in St. John's Night. And it's social utopia. And you know, it's a real safe place to live, to work. There's a vibrancy about it, despite not many people in the photograph. Let's travel 100 years later. Same space. What's happened? People are emigrating, going to America, Australia, buildings being boarded up, and the advent of rural electrification, wires crisscrossing the streetscape, and the biggest social intrusion into any rural Irish town and urban centre is the advent of the motor car. That space that used to be the living vibrancy of our communities where people met and interacted becomes a sea of tarmac, and it becomes a car park. And this has happened slowly. It's not someone from the outside that has done it. It's us, it's our parents, it's our grandparents bringing the vehicle into the town centre. So with all those little things I've been talking about, let's see what happens with 25 years after the creation of your plant, which you've just done. Exact same space. So let's see what's happened. We've undergrounded the overhead wires. We've brought colour schemes into the town centre. We're bringing families into the upper floors, more commercial into the town core. We're bringing trees in to soften the streetscape. But the biggest thing, we've discriminated against the motor car into narrow circulation routes just in the town centre and muscled out to give more space to pedestrians. And this makes your town more desirable, more people want to be there. And it's all the little things that collectively when they come together. And this is what makes towns sing. And this is what makes them a desirable tourism destinations and brings money into your town centre. Also trying to deliver other projects. what we've tried to do in recent years is local authority used to provide all the new civic buildings and a lot of the initiatives, but they don't have as much money anymore. It's the reality. And really what we're looking for now within towns is responsible citizenship, where voluntary and community groups, including the Chamber of Commerce, to come together and they put the foot forward into the space that local authorities used to be in the forefront in. And as well as that, if local communities come together with new projects, there's a greater sense of ownership. So local authorities now lead from behind as opposed to in front. And this is a project that we delivered as a new theatre for the town centre. And we try and deliver a new civic building every 10 years. So we looked at all the voluntary teams in the town, the elected representatives, the tidy towns, the hotels, the chambers, and the media. We put one person from those teams, and they come together and they become a vehicle for getting grant aid, which the local authority help with for providing a new capital project. And that capital project then is run by the community. And this is an example. There's an old parochial hall. The church gave it to us. Gave it to a community investment company, which was a series of people within the town, making a town team structured by the local authority. And they delivered the new $3.5 million theatre for the town centre. And it's run by the community. And civic buildings are so important because they bring people in from the outside, they bring a spend in. And these are all the various different events that have happened in the theatre since it's been done. Tommy Tiernan, comedy, news talk, book clubs, all that sort of stuff are bringing people into the town centre, and it's very good for small businesses, great football. And last year we ran the National Tidy Towns Conference in the town hall. It's a 225-seat venue. But again, if the community hadn't put it together, you wouldn't have 225 delegates in and spending money over the weekend. And Dermot Bannon hosts it. He was really excellent for us. Another big thing we've tried to do is for rural communities, outdoor adventure has been very good for us. And Killarney had the crown for years, and we never thought we could touch their cloak in the biblical term. But we've been pushing it a lot over the last 15 years. And we started with these Ironman. Do you know what the Ironman sort of thing is? We discovered Ironman wasn't very good for us because Ironman came to town, he ran his race, had his pasta, and he went to bed. So he didn't actually spend any money. So now we've geared the whole thing down for domestic man, for people like myself who might do 2 or 3K, and you bring the level down. And domestic man comes and his wife and the kids, and they're all eating pizzas, and they're having a fantastic time. They stay for 4 or 5 days. So all of these things were to push in a big way. And this is an image of our county manager, Peter Hines, after getting a difficult question at a council meeting on a Friday night. But I think he made it safely to the other side. But there's domestic man checking his watch there before he goes off. But you see, everyone's happy. You're having spend in town, the activities, small businesses are happy. They love eating, people, they love towns, they love beer, they love shopping. So it's all about creating activity. Another thing we've pushed very much is back in Noel Dempsey's time, he tried to put money into smarter travel, which is essentially the road engineers have discovered after 60 or 70 years of providing new motorways that it only attracts more cars out onto the road and better roads. So they were looking at towns that could come up with ideas that they would give money to if they could come up with ideas to reduce the amount of car travel. And so we pitched for this. It's National Smarter Travel money, and we won about 5 million at the time, which was really great. It kept the salaries going for the outdoor staff in the town council during the recession. But essentially our proposal to central government was that if we linked 70% of our residential areas with greenways, that people would travel less in cars and they'd be walking to town. So we've built a huge amount of greenways in the town centre. It's been very successful. A big reduction in car journeys, around 5%, and which is a lot for people who are we're addicted to cars as a nation. And all the schools and various businesses are connected up to it with smarter travelling plans. And we have to build this building, which is the information centre for smarter travel yet, at the very end of it. And to try and get people to use the greenways, we have lots of initiatives like carpooling for various offices, and they get prizes for doing this. We also have bike buffets. So for 20 quid, you can get a 5-course meal, but you cycle between the hotels for each course. And we go around like a flash mob, about 150 people from place to place. So winning hearts and minds is very important too. We're nearly there now. And of course, we've also developed the Greenway from Westport up to Achill, the Great Western Greenway. It has completely reversed the fortunes of the towns of Mulranny, Newport and Achill Sound. They're brimming with cafes and a super highway of cyclists coming in. So the more you develop greenways, in fact, if you develop more greenways in West Common, the next time I can cycle here instead of coming here by car. But it brought in 175,000 users annually on the Greenway, 90 plus jobs to the local economy, and brings in about 7.2 million each year. Last 5 or 6 slides. Westport has a planned estate town. Westport House is very important to us. It has been in the ownership of the Brown family for the past 250 years until last year, and they were wonderful people. They were pioneers in terms of Irish tourism. This is Lord and Lady Altamont, and this is them celebrating 50 years in business. And a terrible thing happened in terms of planning back in the 1950s. That entrance from the town centre to Westport House I discussed earlier on was severed because the council at the time bought the front lawn of Westport House to provide housing for the people, even though Lord Altamont provided an alternative site. But it was very much a reflection of the politics of the nation at the time, despite the heroic aspirations of our founding fathers. And it severed the physical relationship between Westport House and the town. So to get to Westport House, you go down to the quay, about 3 miles away. But Lady Sheila Brown took over Westport House around 10 years ago, and we developed a new psychological relationship with them, which is a very positive relationship. And there was an area halfway up the lawn where the estate wall was close to the town centre, and in partnership with them, we built a new set of gates. So for the first time in about 60 or 70 years, you could go from the town into the house, and it repaired those relationships tremendously. Physically, it was not only an important thing, but mentally and psychologically, it was like a negative cloud over the town for half a century. And the gates were finished, and they're called locally, in very biblical terms, the Gates of Atonement. This is Lady Sheila Brown. She's Grace O'Malley's great-great-granddaughter 14 times, and there she is at the Gates of Atonement at the opening, very pleased. And Grace O'Malley, you've probably heard of her, the Pirate Queen. We don't really know what she looks like. We just have this image of her, but we found this girl on the internet, and we think she might have looked a little bit like her. So this was Grace, and she was very savvy, and she knew how to work with government, so she was very cute. And she was raiding all the English ships, pirating them off the west coast, and Elizabeth sent the Crown forces to suppress her, and Grace says, I better go talk to Elizabeth. So she hopped on her Connemara hooker, went down the coast, around by Penzance in Cornwall, and she came up to Greenwich Palace, and she walked into the great chamber where Queen Elizabeth was. And one of the courtiers came up to Grace O'Malley and said, you haven't bowed to the Queen. And quick as you like, Grace O'Malley turned around and says, royalty doesn't bow to royalty. And the next problem was that they couldn't communicate, because Grace only had Gaelic and Elizabeth only had English. But they were both educated women. They were educated by the church, so they both had Latin, and they conversed in Latin. And being women in a highly male-dominated world back then, they got on like a house on fire. And apparently she was free to pillage for the rest of her life. So the moral of the story is it pays to cooperate with the government. And then at the opening of the Gates of Atonement, who better than the Clubay Pipe Band and 1,000 townspeople, with the town manager and Lady Sheila Brown metaphorically hand in hand, walking through the gates, led by the Clubay Pipe Band, right up to the front gates of Westport House. So really, for a town to survive, it must have a strong collective consciousness, and to develop coherently, it must set goals for its future. And that is exactly what you have done, and we know this, because by putting a plan like this together, it harnesses your community, you have a collective buy-in, and this is very potent, this document. This will harness development into the future, and I know because we've been there 20 years ago, and you're starting in a position way ahead that we were 20 years ago. So Longford is a super town, you're great architectural heritage. I often come up to Dublin in the car and I go down, what's the road called? Barrack Street. It's one of my favourite architectural journeys, going down Barrack Street. I assume it's where all the merchant princes lived. And you can see all the best of Georgian architecture, Victorian houses. You have a little bit of Celtic revival down there. You have Neo-Palladianism. There's a 70s period house. But they've all the best of architecture and little pavilions all the way down that road. It's one of my favourite drives in the country, and it does my heart good, like Longford does, every time I come through it. And I must stay here more often because it's a happening place. And you have a great future. Thanks very much.
Minister, who's just going out the door now, David English, Minister for Housing and Urban Development, our Cathaoirleach for Longford County Council, Louis McIntyre, our Cathaoirleach of the Longford Municipal District, Seamus Butler, our Local Authority and Municipal District members. We have Councillor Jerry Warnock, Councillor Micheál Carrigy, Councillor Joe Flaherty, Councillor Pat O'Toole, Councillor Sexton, Councillor John Brown and Councillor Peggy Nolan here. Our esteemed speakers, Niall, Moira and Simon, members of the ULG and the Longford County Council Regeneration team, colleagues, friends and all the stakeholders in the Camlin Quarter. For those of you that don't know me, I'm John McKeown. I'm deputising for our Chief Executive, Paddy Mahon, here today. My day job is the Executive Director for Longford Municipal District, and I'm also Head of Finance. So bearing that in mind, it makes me very proud today to be able to speak at the launch of a project that's very close to my heart from both the Longford Municipal District perspective and from an economic development and a finance perspective. I might talk in a minute about the numbers and the financial commitment that Longford County Council have so far given and what we will be doing in the future. So forgive me for that. I'll be putting on my finance hat in a minute. So I'll try to keep that as short and sweet as possible. Longford Town, I suppose, is coming from a period of damage mitigation as a result of the recession. So from 2012 to 2015, if you can imagine, Longford Town has withdrawn and come through that. There, I suppose, followed after that a period of new dawn from 2016 to 2018, where a lot of projects and plans were conceived and developed and identified for the town, and this plan being one of those. These plans are seen to be transformational and regenerative catalysts for Longford Town. So now we're coming into the era where these plans and the projects need to be delivered for the communities and the citizens and the business for Longford Town. So it's it all starts here, folks. As part of the urban design and economic framework for Longford Town, a number of critical nodes in the Camlin Quarter were identified, along with other critical nodes around the town. And the things that were identified in the Camlin Quarter were the Connolly Barracks, the Omniplex Centre and the shopping centre behind it, the council lands here on Great Water Street. Other areas then for development in Little Water Street, areas the Lower Main Street, the Mill Bridge and the Providers building. So the focal point of all that, when we looked at it, you can see in the map that was there in front over the 55 acres. The focal point for all these was the Camlin River. It was important as well that connectivity between those places would happen, so both physical and I suppose ergonomical connectivity between the places in the Camlin Quarter and to other critical sites around the town would be maintained in the plan. So you have other strategic sites around the town like the Tesco Shopping Centre and the Main Street and the Mall, and I suppose through the roads and the footpath network that all those would be connected. So any plan that was to be produced had to be accessible and attractive and achievable for Longford. More earlier on, she talked about layers of history, and I suppose, as often is the case, the best way to find solutions for the future is to draw from the lessons of the past. Even the earliest settlers here in Longford recognised the importance of the river. Even the town itself, Longford, Efarrell, is the ship port of the O'Farrells, and that came to pass because of its proximity to the Camlin River. So through the ages, I suppose Longford developed into the most important trading post in the region due to its proximity as well to the Camlin. In the 18th and 19th century, I suppose along the Camlin here, along these sites, you had tanneries, you had distillery, and you had a range of mills on the banks here. And then through the early mid 20th century, you had meat processing and other industries along here as well. So now we're in a different era. We're turning now to face and embrace the Camlin again as the fantastic resource and amenity it is for all the citizens of Longford. So we've seen similar things happen in towns like Westport, that was mentioned earlier, and in Carrick-on-Shannon, that's beside us, when they did turn to face and embrace the river and everything that brought over the last few years. The opportunity and the timing, I suppose that the timing of the Camlin Quarter plan couldn't be better. In 2016, Longford Municipal District realised that the best way to attract funding for various sources was to have ready to go, and as Councillor Nolan used to call them, shovel-ready projects in the pipeline. So the ULG was formed in conjunction with Longford County Council at that time, and the regeneration team were integral to that, the process. So it brought us into the process that brought us here today. Now, I suppose back to the timing, the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund was launched just this morning. And we now stand to be significant beneficiaries of this fund with the Camlin Integrated Action Plan. It's a testament to the plan that the Minister for Urban Development himself is here to launch the Integrated Action Plan today. So probably the first place that after this fund has been announced that he came into this building here. So it's because of the preparatory and consultative work that was done by the ULG and the Longford Municipal District that we now have the opportunity to enjoy the first mover advantage on this and become a national exemplar for this fund. So as I say, the timing for this couldn't be better. Just a little bit about the fund. I know it was mentioned earlier, but how Longford would stack up in this. I think the fund is there for towns. The urban part of the fund is there for towns over 10,000 people. In the last census we had 10,008, so we just qualified there. And hopefully they're still around. So there's an allocation under the urban regeneration part of 2 billion up to 27 under the National Development Plan up to 2027. So there will be calls for proposals for this, and it's open until the 28th of September. So we're going to have a very busy summer getting together the applications for this. So the bids under the plan, the bids ideally must be local authority led, must be matched by at least 25% public-private funds or public and private funds, be valued at a minimum of 2 million, be a catalyst for development that would not otherwise occur, contribute to further development of innovative and transformational urban regeneration proposals. So, as you know yourselves, anyone that's involved in this, the Camlin Quarter Integrated Action Plan, it ticks all of those boxes and more. So we're ideally positioned now. One of the main tenets of the Camlin Quarter Integrated Action Plan is that we achieve a unity of vision from all stakeholders. So we want this process now throughout the summer to be participative, collaborative and consultative. We, at this stage, we need to be open to all opportunities and all possibilities that might come under this plan. So because of that, we will strongly urge public participation, hope that all stakeholders would make their views known through the various fora that already exist and some that will exist in the near future. So, as I said, the Camlin Quarter Integrated Action Plan, it's your plan, and I think working together in a collaborative fashion, we can deliver this. So, thanks to everybody who has brought the ideas so far to this stage. So, to the ULG itself, a lot of the members of the ULG are here today. Longford Municipal District, I suppose, who have already put their money where their mouth is regarding this. In 2018, Longford Municipal District allocated reserves of 150,000 to various projects in Longford Municipal District, and 50,000 of that was championed by Councillor Peggy Nolan there for the Camlin, for the lighting and the footpaths here along the Camlin. So there's 50,000 in that. 45,000 again has been set aside for footpaths at Lower Main Street. In the 2018 to 2022 capital plan, a further 250,000 is in there for this part of the town, championed by the municipal district as well. The Leah Digi Hub, as you know, that's part of this as well, has already attracted funding of 200,000 from towns and villages, and a further 500,000 from Enterprise Ireland. Longford Municipal District again are committed to funding this, to funding the gap there to deliver that. And Longford Municipal District and Longford County Council will also be asked to match fund anything for this new urban regeneration fund. So, as I say, a lot of funding already committed, and more to be committed in the next few years. So, thanks to the councillors that are on the ULG, there are Councillor Sexton, Councillor Warnock, Councillor Nolan and Councillor Brown. Thanks to Councillor Butler or Cahirlock, who is a long-time advocate and a supporter of this project. Also to Councillor Flaherty for his support since joining the Longford Municipal District. We thank also our Directors of Service, Barbara Heslin and John Brannigan, under the guidance of our own Chief Executive, Paddy Mahon. As well as that, this This project now will be the biggest collaborative cross-directorate project ever undertaken by Longford County Council. It involves the Economic Development team, the Regeneration team, the Lea Digi Hub team, the Housing section, the Roads and Infrastructure section, the Facilities section, and the Finance and IT sections, and all those under the ULG and Longford Municipal District. So a special word of thanks to the Regeneration team, and especially Lorraine here, who really is one of the main drivers of this and has brought the story to where it is so far. Finally, thanks, I know in his absence he's just gone, but anyway, thanks to Damien English, Minister for Urban Regeneration, for coming to Longford today to a launch which we believe will become the next big phoenix from the ashes story in Longford. So, as you all know, there's no better place in Ireland than Longford when it comes to deliver success from adversity. So, thanks to all for coming here today.
Thank you very much, John. Just before we finish up, if there anybody has any questions for any of our speakers that were here today, we have a couple of minutes for questions for Niall or for Simon or for Moira. Yes, sure.
My name is Catherine Berry. I live here in number 17 in Great Water Street. First of all, I'd like to say a great word of thanks to Peggy Nolan, Jerry Warnock and May Sexton, who have been so good and so patient with me, because I've come so often to them crying literally about our street, about Water Street. And I'd like to know, first of all, what is going to be done about Water Street? If there are all these empty buildings, which there are in the street, what's going to happen about a compulsory order to make people do something with this property? Is it all just going to be pulled down, and are we going to do something like what they've done in Westport, make it a nice open area where people can come, can meet, sit outside, have their cups of coffee, whatever. But you know, what is going to happen to us? Then also we have so many empty houses in the street that it's hard to believe it. Now, granted, they wouldn't be family houses, but there would be a one person or a two people house. What's going to happen? I'm number 17. I have nobody living beside me in 18, and then 19 is the next two buildings, the workshops and various other things. They're all gone now. So I want to know today, as we stand here, what is the plan for Water Street?
Okay, I'll answer that one if I can, and thanks very much for the question. I suppose where we are at the moment with the plan is at the moment it's a phase 2 of a plan, so we are opening this out to suggestions from the public, and anyone is welcome to put in any suggestion that they want, around any specific area within the plan. You mentioned compulsory purchase orders, and you mentioned things like that. Now, there are a lot of, I suppose, legal hoops to go through before we get to a stage where we start doing that. But as we say, we are not ruling anything in or anything out at this point in time. I would hope, with the collaboration of the, of the people and the public representatives here, that we would put together, a plan for Great Water Street and Little Water Street in the whole plan there. So this will develop into something like that. And as I say, for our funding application, that has to be ready before the 28th of September. So it's, I suppose, a bit of watch this space, but also there will be chances for the citizens in the area to collaborate up until that date. So.
Okay, can I ask you another question then? What did they do in Waterford and Westport about these buildings that are left empty? How did they go about getting compulsory orders to get these buildings knocked down or whatever?
Oh, they did that. In some of the buildings they did that. Yeah. They had to.
Simon. Yeah. Hi. How are you? It's a great question. I think it's very good. But as was said, I think Great Water Street is part of phase 2 of the plan, which is not done yet. So really, collectively, it's people like you who live on the street inform these plans. And I know it's not done yet for the street. So there's two different ways you can look at it. You can there's a lot of finances available from Lyle's department in terms of housing for refurbishing existing derelict houses. There's also the demolition aspect of it, which is very extreme, and probably you don't want to go there because they're historic buildings. So really, I suppose the answer is not there yet because the phase 2 of the plan has to be done. But in Westwater and Waterford, that's exactly why we would consult with people like yourselves who live there, and you would inform what's best for the future of that street, because you perhaps have been living there for many years.
Yes, my grandparents also lived on the street.
So it's 3 generations.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's people like you who are very important in informing these plans, but it hasn't been finalised yet. But the beauty about that is that you can structure that plan and you know what's best for that street. So I think the more you come in and consult here and be a very positive presence on the street, the more it can help you realise its potential. I know the answer hasn't been given to you because the plan is part of phase 2 and it's not done yet. But
can I ask you another question then? I know you, John, as well, another question. You know, the buildings here on the street, we know they're very old. We know that they have been very, run down, very neglected, all that kind of thing. Let me ask the question, is it worth, for historic reasons, doing up these buildings, or really are they gone by that stage, and the people who own them, should they be given a compulsory order then to knock them down?
I think that has to be assessed first. I suppose it's premature really knowing the final answer, but you're part of the solution and you're a very important part of that solution. So I think the question can't be answered for a while, but there's many different ways of tackling it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, every building will have its own story, and every building will have to be, separately assessed.
But what's very good today is Longford County Council are here and inviting the public in for their feedback, and that's a very proactive thing because it doesn't happen in a lot of places. The fact you're here is an important component of that future.
John, what I suppose successful urban regeneration experiences in different parts of the country all point to is, I suppose, the local community. I mean, buildings have owners, and getting that conversation going with the local authority is critical. This morning we heard from chief executives in Waterford, in Kilkenny, in Mayo. Obviously there's ourselves as well watching, I suppose, good experiences right around the country. Louth is a very good case in point. And we've also put new instruments at the disposal of local authorities. They may not be perfect, but they're intended to move, I suppose, that sort of piece around, getting better uses out of the buildings and the spaces that we have. We have a vacant sites levy, and we're finding, I suppose, it's a bit of a mixed bag in relation to how local authorities are engaging with that process. We're going to increase the vacant site levy now under legislation which went through. I brought it through with Minister English last Friday to increase the levy progressively up to 7%. We want local authorities to use the Urban Regeneration and Housing Act and the vacant site levy to target buildings and properties that, for whatever reason, and people can have all sorts of economic and other reasons why they can't maybe do something with the building, but we want to try and make sure that the buildings and the properties in the centre of our cities and towns, if they can't be used by the individuals that own them, they need to be recycled and reused and brought into beneficial use. Thinking of, for example, all of the people in our country that would love to have an opportunity to have, a good quality living and working opportunity in the centre of our towns and villages. Every time, and I know Great Water Street, I've come through here many a time, and it is a place that, is probably too marked by vacancy and underutilisation and so on. I know it has its flooding and other issues going way, way back, but these are all factors that have to be, as Simon says, pulled into the IAP process and so on. So, as John and your official, your public officials in the local authority have outlined, this is now actually about the community getting vocal and getting engaged with the process and setting out their ideas. There's great urban design, planning, finance. Your local authorities are wonderful places to get things done. I've seen it all over the country. Now it's long for its time. It's long for its opportunity to take all the learnings from the great work that Simon is doing and many others like him right around and localise it here and so on. So there are no hard and fast answers today because there isn't actually the finalisation of the process. But there's the opening of a process, so that I suppose in time you can come to talk to people like us in the department or elsewhere to gain our support. And we are absolutely committed to local authorities that want to take active steps in relation to managing their city and town centres. We have the buy and renew and repair and lease initiatives in the social housing programme, where we're willing to support the capital costs associated with buying empty and derelict properties and bringing them back into beneficial use for social housing purposes. But the Urban Regeneration and Development Fund goes way beyond that into, I suppose, broader sort of areas of development as well. John is right, CPO is tricky business legally, it's expensive, it's time consuming and so on. And very often, I suppose, the important thing is that you have the conversation, you have the surveys as to the properties that are vacant, you engage with the property owners. Ultimately the CPO process is there if the owner can't be found, or there's just a difficulty that you have to overcome using that mechanism. But the important thing is that you have the conversations first. And we'll be with you and support you all the way in relation to that process. We're there, the legislation is ours and so on, and you can take back with us. Longford County Council can harness us as support in relation to that process. Okay?
Let me put this to you before I stop talking. Let me put this one point to you. If you were a business person
yes.
and you said you'd like to come to Longford and you set up an industry, or supposing you said I'm going to visit Catherine in Great Water Street, you would not come down the street because you'd say, I know nobody lives down there. You'd
I think you're right, yes. Yes.
And you'd see the cut.
Yes.
And you'd say, I know she doesn't live there, I must have got the address wrong. Do you see?
Yeah.
And also, we do have some antisocial behaviour in the street.
Yeah.
We have 2 blocks of apartments, so we do have some antisocial behaviour, and it's this where clues could be brought in maybe to help. I don't know, when you think about St. Michael's Road, the way it was done up.
But this will all be considered in the new urban design framework, and we will bring all that in, that these ideas, whether we need CPO, whether we need to bring in a housing agency, what sort of housing is needed in this area, what sort of development, and that's what the next step is about, and getting people like you to give us them ideas of what is needed, how you feel the place works for you at the moment, and what we need to do to improve that. And that will be all included in what we do.
Yeah, it's a very lonely street. I remember when Water Street was a great street, and then you knew everybody. Now you know nobody. Nobody talks, nothing. I've nobody living the other side of my sister. I'm very lucky living one side of me, but I've nobody, there's nobody else.
Yeah.
And this is very bad, And you see, you're talking about the whole redevelopment of the Camlin and the whole area and all that. But if you do all that and then you see the top of Water Street, it's just not on, It would be terrible. But think of it from bringing a business to Longford, or thinking of it from coming to visit me in Water Street. Just think about that for a minute.
And think about what would bring people into the centre of Longford,
yes.
and have them stay in the centre of Longford.
Yes.
I'm from a large extended family.
Yes.
If I was to organise a family reunion and sort of suggest, right, we're going to go away for a weekend, it's going to be no problem selling the concept, going to Westport or lots of other places. Many of the Midlands towns, and Longford is not the only one, has a challenge in relation to, I suppose, getting that sort of message across. And yet, it has great raw material. You have obviously with Centre Parks, huge investment that's come into the county here, and not for no reason. So it's really about spreading that sort of benefit and activating that sort of possibility here in your county town.
Okay, and I want you, and I'm going to sit down now. I wanted to say this one thing to you. You just think, I'm going to start up a business, I'm going to set it up in Longford, but I look at the top of Water Street, and this could be a lovely street. It's the way through to the shopping centre. We have our council offices both sides of the street.
Yeah.
We have our library right through to the library. I mean, it's not as if it was just nothing. And you think, I'm going to set up a business there, but when I see the Water Street looked at, I just don't know.
No, you have a point.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
I won't hold you long. We've had a long afternoon. It's been very interesting. Caherlick of the county, fellow councillors, Director of Services and staff. What I will say is we have made a huge start here today, but what we really want to start talking about now is delivery. Delivery. We can have all the plans in the world, and we can, I'm sure, and I can assure Catherine that we as councillors will be very vigilant that the best of consultation happens, because this is about where people live and the shape of where they want to live in the future. I think Lorraine had the vision and the work ethic to go out there and find we're the only town in Ireland as part of the Urb Act, the only one in the whole country. And to find that source that brought us today to that process here is nothing less than wonderful. I started at that group, but I threw my toys out of the pram, and the other councillors, I said, no, this doesn't go anywhere, or I've heard it all before, I have to be honest. And fair dues to you, you stuck at it, and we are here today with a roadmap as to where we're going to go. And we have a reputation in Longford for delivering. The regeneration team came out of the ghost estates, and Longford was a shining example, and the Minister said so, and I'm sure Niall will bear it out, that per capita we had more ghost estates by far than any other county in the country, and we tackled them the best, and they went at it, and it seemed an impossible job, but they did it. And then they moved on, and they got into the other areas, and now we find today we're into regeneration of this Camlin quarter. We had a northern quarter. I thought with the Camlin quarter we'd have a half, but we're back to the Camlin. I think it's very well named and very apt. And, you know, we also have a reputation. We restored a cathedral in this town in 5 years, on time and on budget. And I believe what we should do as very early in this process is set a date by which we want to have a completion or milestones, and then we work towards them, because if you're open-ended at that end, it will go on forever. As I say, the OPW are 40 years restoring Boyle Abbey, and it's still not finished. So, you know, if you go at it, and that's what we need to do now, not just as councillors, not just as executives and staff of the council, but you the people of Longford. That's what we need. All get together and let's make Longford a better place to live. It's a good place to live, despite its failings. We can make it a superb place to live. So thank you all very much.